Can we all do fingers this time?
What is fingers? Like this?
No, yeah, like this.
Okay, 3, 2, 1.
You guys are all weirdos. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the PandemFlick Vodcast. This is the show where your panel of hosts dive into a number of different films that all center around the theme of a viral pandemic or a viral outbreak. And of course, we are creating this show during our own global pandemic. So all of your hosts are recording their responses from their own secured germ bubbles. So welcome to the show. And you're welcome. You're welcome for the entertainment we're providing you.
Do you need me to bring you a beer? Boyd, you good still?
Oh, son. All right, I'm
How
good.
can you bring him a beer? We're sheltering in place.
Yeah.
That was the joke.
Ah, shit, did I blow your cover?
You did.
Well, to be fair, we are very socially distanced. I think there's a good 70 feet between us right now. So
I've never really understood him personally. Oh, wait, that kind of social distance.
yeah.
The physical one.
Yeah. All right. Before we dive into this episode's film and start discussing it, I would like to introduce you all to your panel of hosts. We will start with Mr. Adam Harum. Adam, give the folks at home a wave. There you are. Mm-hmm. Adam is a award-winning filmmaker and is the host of his web series Done Better, where he takes a look at your favorite or your not so favorite Hollywood films and tells you how they could have been done better. You get it? It's in the title. See what I did there? It's a thing.
Yeah.
Adam, thank you very much for coming to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Boyd. Absolutely.
Next up, we've got Isaac Joslin. Isaac Joslin, the man with the giant glass. There it is. Yep, that's it. Oh, look at his big old meaty hands. Isaac Joslin has many talents and many opinions when it comes to the world of film, and he has expressed a lot of them in his own podcast, the SacCast Movie Pod, where we all listeners take a treacherous journey and deep into his mind and find out what makes him tick. And it's worth a listen. It is currently on hiatus, but I'm sure after I keep doing this spiel about 19 more times, it's going to force him to bring it back. So, but if you want to track it down now, the SacCast Movie Pod currently has 19 centuries worth of listening on the internet. So you can catch up on the show while it's on break. Isaac, God damn it. Thanks for being on the show.
My cat just took a huge shit. It smells awful. I'm going to light a candle, actually.
All right. Isaac, while you're lighting that candle.
Shoot, I can smell that too.
Our next host with the very...
we're all in the same building.
Our next host with the powerful nose is Clancy Bundy. Clancy's a jack of all trades. Not only is he involved in Done Better and the co-host of the SacCast Movie Pod, but he's also an incredibly talented artist, and you can find his scribbles on the web. Scribbles with Clancy on Instagram. Follow him, like him, do all that stuff. Clancy, thanks for being on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you very, very much.
And I am your final host, Adam Boyd. I'm a professor of film at Eastern Washington University.
Burnt myself with the...
And I think we're good to go. So, all right, for those of you who are new to the program and how it works, every film that we discuss on this show has been curated by one of your hosts. And so tonight's film, this was your film, Adam, is that correct?
Yes.
All right. So tonight's
I think
film
it was
was
my immediate go-to when you suggested or pitched this. I was basically like, Children of Men.
You had it at the top of your list. All right. Well, there you have it. This episode's film is Children of Men, the 2006 film. I'm not going to say any more about it because I'm going to let our host who selected it set up the film. Adam, tell us a little bit about this film. Give us a little bit of a plot summary, some background info before we start chewing on it.
Awesome. One of the reasons this was my go-to when you pitched the concept behind pandemics is that not only is this one of what I would consider one of the best examples of doing a pandemic movie and telling stories within it, but also just is probably one of my favorite movies. It would definitely be in my top 10, and I feel like every time I watch it, it only moves further up the list to get to a point of like being one of my favorite movies of all time. It's just very just great across the board, from story, visuals, just the performances. It's just a great piece of cinema. And the overall plot, just to get into it, is the concept is that this was in 2006, so in early 2008, basically infertility occurs and children are no longer able to be born in the world.
And they put that on the children.
Yeah, children, those damn
children
kids.
aren't able to be born. They're lazy.
Those damn kids.
Entitled fucking Zoomers.
Yeah. So there's basically a pandemic that sweeps across the world where children cannot be born anymore, whether that's their fault or not. And this story takes place 20 years after the fact, where the world is kind of like slowly crumbling into chaos. And the UK is basically one of the last standing bastions of like civilization that still exists. And a man within that, portrayed by Clive Owen, is contracted by a rebellion, basically, to get papers to help this lady cross the border and get to this secret place that is very up in the air and aloof. And basically he gets wrapped up in this whole rebellion via his ex-wife and ends up being put in charge of this lady, who it turns out is the first person to be pregnant for the first time in 20 years, and basically has to take her across immigration lines and through the apocalypse to try and bring her to safety and what that means. So that's the overall concept. In general, like I said, probably one of my favorite movies of all time. I really, really enjoy it, and I could gush all day. I've actually spoken about this movie on several occasions for a couple different public library performances and stuff like that, so it's shown, and then I've shown up to talk about it. But yeah, I'll let kind of the rest of everyone else take over, and I can jump in at the end if we want.
Excellent. And I don't think we mentioned at the top, but this is directed by Alfonso Cuarón.
Yes.
Of course, who has done many other films. 3. He did do Harry Potter 3. For many Harry Potter fans, their favorite. He also did Gravity. What was the most recent Netflix film he did that is entirely black and white?
What? Oh, Roma?
Yeah. God,
Roma.
Yeah, Roma.
I still haven't seen it.
Beautiful film. Film. Oh,
yeah. If you're into that sort of thing.
I am. But enough talking for me. We're going to kick this over to Mr. Isaac Joslin.
Oh.
And get ready. Isaac, tell us your initial thoughts on the film, and then we'll talk kind of how the film involves this whole pandemic concept as well.
Yeah, I mean, I probably haven't seen this movie since the theater.
Really?
I probably caught like snatches of it on TV here and there, but I remember I saw this with my my mom, of all people.
It's a good mom film.
Yeah.
And at the end of the movie, she was like, "I don't really get it." And it took every fiber of my being not to strike my own mother.
Your mother, a religious woman, didn't get all the religious themes woven throughout this film.
She still doesn't believe me that RoboCop is a Christ allegory.
It's right there, Mom. The screenplay was practically the Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, though, I mean, this movie didn't age that well. I mean, it's all about like immigrants being put in cages and ghettoized, and like the rise of a fascist state. It's like, come on, that has no bearing on it at all. No, it's good. I like it a lot. It was nice to see it again. The only thing that doesn't fully land for me in this movie, and okay, more on that later, but it's that after spending a lot of time with my nephew in this quarantine, the prospect of a world without children isn't that unappealing to me. You know, it's like no kids. All right, cool. We can just chill.
I think it's more about humanity facing its own, like, you know, disintegration and end than it is about like them missing the kids. You know.
I'm not going to have any legacy after I leave this world. Why would I give a shit?
But you do hope like our species achieves greater things.
Guys, you're just playing in the mud right now. I don't know what you're hoping to find.
It's a get out of jail free card. Suddenly the population's sterile. It's like, I don't have to worry about tomorrow anymore. You know? It's a load off of my soul.
Right? Yeah,
that's what it would be. No, but it's a great movie. I wish that it hadn't become more relevant over the past 14 years since this was made. Not
to interrupt, but there was a recent interview in 2016 with Cuarón about the 10-year anniversary of this film, and of course that was I believe it was just after the 2016 election, and so. Did
something happen in 2016?
Yeah, Cuarón basically said exactly what you said. I really wish this piece of work I made wasn't so fucking relevant right now.
The goal of dystopian fiction isn't to age into a documentary.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is probably my favorite Clive Owen performance, because generally I find Clive Owen, I mean, he's the sleepiest man in show business, right? He just looks like if you let him drift off, he'll just never wake up again. Because my first exposure to, my first knowing, I probably saw him in something, but my first time that Clive Owen
crossed your radar,
registered to me as a entity was in Sin City of all things.
Oh yeah.
And I remember when he showed up in that movie, I'm like, why is this guy so bored? He's so sleepy and bored. He's like murdering people, and he's just the constant voiceover where he's like, I'm Clive Owen, and I'm shooting people in the head with all of these hookers. Why is he so disinterested in shooting people with hookers?
Yeah, my favorite part of that whole story is when the grenade rolls between his legs and he just says incredibly flatly, and everything was going so well. And then it explodes and launches him in the air.
But I've kind of, over the years, I've sort of grown to love Sleepy Uncle Clive. And in this movie, like, he's perfect for the character he's playing, who is this, haggard, depressed, alcoholic bureaucrat who is just kind of over everything.
Yeah, sold out and hollow.
Yeah, who is like his whole character arc is going from Sleepy Clive to someone who gives a shit again.
Mm-hmm. To woke Clive.
Well, I mean, he's still Clive Owen.
Right. He's woke. Like, he's perceptually,
he does in the movie going to sleep finally. So.
Sleepwalk.
He's getting somewhere. He's just
that's his arc. The arc is his ability to finally sleep on that boat.
He's not woke. He's just drowsy.
but really, this is one of those movies that kind of throw. Well, I mean, it's Alfonso Cuarón who. He likes to throw his nuts on the table and be like, I use like 10-minute takes that develop within the camera, and you go all over the place, and I hand the camera to 6 different operators. And so this is like, people that are super into that shit are going to, blow a gasket watching this thing. But while this movie is super show-offy in that aspect, it makes sense for what it's doing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel gratuitous. It just feels like, the scene in the car with Julianne Moore and the ping pong ball seems a little gratuitous in that respect, but hey, you know what?
It's like they had to work in a parlor trick on top of the
everything else. Yeah.
It'd be like if in Jaws that long take, they're like passing cigarettes to each other the whole time. Here, Mayor, have a cigarette. No, I believe you should have a.
But it's done well enough that you're like, okay, you can have that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, the centerpiece of the movie is that final sequence in the refugee camp that devolves into an all-out war. And how long is that one take?
It's like 13 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That Clive Owen's navigating a battlefield trying to save the pregnant woman and her no longer the baby and the woman. I don't know. It's good. Though this viewing, it did stick out to me that Julianne Moore's character actually felt kind of out of place. Because you come into this dreary world with all of these really cool characters with very distinct sort of shabby lived-in feel, and then Julianne Moore shows up and it's like, oh, look, here's a movie star. There's this like gorgeous movie star in the middle of this apocalypse.
I think that's an issue for her overall. We didn't mention it on the last episode, but again, we had another film that was set in this very ragged post-apocalyptic kind of time, and I feel that Julianne Moore always still looks like a Hollywood actress. You can't rough her up.
She's too hot to act.
Boogie Nights. She's a coke addict porn star, and she's just gorgeous. Right, Clancy? Anyway, continue, Isaac.
No, it's great.
I think the problem, she's also ADR'd through the whole thing. Like, really badly ADR'd. Like, all of her lines on the bus. Like, there's a little bit. That happens to her a lot.
There's an issue with a sort of, like, there's a little roughness in the early portions of the movie where they're like explaining things, like characters are explaining things to each other that they would already know.
Yeah, there's like, a little exposition.
When Michael Caine shows up as the hippie guy and he's like, oh, look, they're taking them immigrants and the boss to the immigrant station. They were only supposed to blow the bloody immigrants off.
I mean, I at least find that there's like a chunk where he starts bringing up like the facility they're going to go to, the Human Project. And he's like, so there's a bunch of people sitting at the Human Project. And then Clive Owen goes on this rant about giving exposition about the Human Project. Then there's that pause, and he's like, I was going to tell a joke.
Right.
And you ruined it. And you're like, okay. I mean, yes, it is kind of very exposition-y, but
they packaged it in a little clever way where it's like, they wink. They're like, it's exposition, but
a little more forgiving.
And it's like, what... In a movie like this, like, you don't begrudge the guy diving into a bucket off the 70-foot drop, a little stumble, before he takes the plunge. You know, you're like, whatever, fine. The one thing I did notice, I hadn't watched this movie again since I had seen Pacific Rim and developed a pure, unbridled hatred for Charlie Hunnam. And he shows up in this movie, and they answered the question that had been in the back of my mind since I saw Pacific Rim, which is, how do you make Charlie Hunnam more unappealing?
Give him
and the answer
dreadlocks.
Is white guy dread.
Yeah, give him dreadlocks.
Though I did enjoy watching him get shot in the background.
Yeah, but that's the only problem with it. Exactly, it's unceremonious. We needed a big, violent death.
No, fuck him. No,
okay, all right.
Deserve it.
Fair enough.
But good movie.
He gets punked by the door trick twice. It's glorious. I expected a door to come flying out of nowhere and kill him.
He is great because he's kind of this ironic, foolish character that just keeps getting like punished for his angst.
Yeah,
patchouli terrorist.
Yeah. Isaac, to culminate your views, I mean, wrap in the handling of this pandemic as well, and how the film kind of deals with the subject matter of this, the lack of fertility in the world.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it doesn't land with me because I don't...
That sounds like Paradise, right?
Houston. Yeah, I don't believe that children are the future. I don't want to let them find the way or what. No, it's good. It works thematically. It's I mean, and I also enjoy those kinds of stories where it's left fairly ambiguous. It's like one day that just the children stopped. Someone turned off the spigot, and you know,
one day everyone went blind, and then one day the blindness was cured. It's totally acceptable.
Well,
let's not retcon things here. And
look at Harum smile. I just pegged him to a wall.
I will say though, this is another film that's an adaptation.
Blindness wasn't the premise.
We're not talking about. Right. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to over you.
This is another film that is an adaptation of a novel as well. So just again, we're in that world. All right, Isaac, at the end of all this, you're the doctor. It sounds like this film's going to make it, yeah? This film's going to survive?
Oh, yeah, thumbs up. It's a good-ass movie that depressingly only becomes more relevant as we continue our slide into fascist chaos.
And on that uplifting note, we'll move on to Mr. Bundy. Clancy, tell us your thoughts on Children of Men and your impressions.
It was nice rewatching it, like Isaac was saying. I probably seen this movie 6 or 7 times. I remember I really liked it the first time I saw it, and then it's sort of just been on the put on while you're cleaning your house sort of rotation. Like, you just put it on, and it's a fun, solid watch whenever you check back in. Like, oh, yeah, I love that guy. And then you keep going back to work.
I like to put the apocalypse on in the background while I'm cleaning my house.
Clive Owen because of his sleepiness, so I just look over like, oh, he's not wearing shoes again.
A little dusting, a little collapse of society. It's all good.
I think this movie and Saving Private Ryan were the two that made me go, oh, like, long shots are technically cool to consider. Obviously, that was a big thing when this movie came out. What I really like about it is it's a pandemic movie that sort of isolates itself from the mechanics of, like, a lot like the last one, like diseases. Like, it's not about the disease in itself. It's about the larger ramifications of it, the societal and political impacts of that, which is I usually with virus movies, you get like, oh, gross. You get like a cabin fever. Like, oh, gross. The immediate grotesqueness of an infection and like the trajectory of how it travels. This one's like, no, people stopped having kids. And from religion to politics, the nations, how nations interact with each other, like the exacerbation of tensions in regards to immigration and stuff. Like, it's like all of these secondary things are the main focus of this movie, which I thought was a really interesting focus for a pandemic movie. So I really appreciated that. Characters are great. I think this is the movie that made me not like Julianne Moore. Like, I'm not trying to trace
this one. Really?
I think this is the one. Like, I don't know. Well, she's not. She's bad. She's ADR'd in this movie, and it sounds horrible. So like you're saying, aesthetically, she doesn't fit in. And then
I have to rewatch it. I've seen this movie like 900 times, and I've never noticed bad ADR before. But I guess
you watch it on the bus scene, like, it's really bad. Like,
you gotta remember how much hatred Clancy holds for Julianne Moore.
I don't know what it is. I think it's because she shows up, and then maybe it's the scene on the bus. They've switch into their argument so quickly on the bus, and she, you wield your anger like a chain on a wire, like whoa,
on a chain, yeah.
Whoa, yeah. I'm just like that. She's like, why are you nagging him so hard? You guys have a dead kid together, but she's almost.
I mean,
you have a dead kid.
You got a dead kid together, but look off. Get over it.
Like, he died of the flu. He didn't die because Clive Owen let him drown in the pool out back. Like, she lays into him. I don't know. This movie is like, she's kind of just like a weird alien who showed up in this movie and made it less enjoyable. And that's
a weird, sexy alien.
On, I guess.
Well, then I saw that, the Red Dragon or whatever that.
What?
Next.
Yeah, she played an iteration of Clarice in one of the.
Well, she was in Hannibal.
That's what it was. Yeah,
and that was terrible.
Red Dragon was Ralph Fiennes.
Yeah.
You all ants in the afterbirth.
Rafe Fiennes.
Did you call me insane?
Anyway, yeah, she was really bad in that movie. Next, and so A Big Lebowski does a little bit to save it, but then I watched Faye and June. I'm like, I just don't like her. I can't explain it.
Shortcuts,
Blindness,
bro.
I didn't.
It's all about shortcuts.
I didn't mind her in Blindness though. So that. Thanks, Adam.
Sounds like you have a really complicated relationship with Julianne Moore.
I do. Like, she's going to show up and say, like, we're going to talk about our dead kid. I didn't tell you guys. I have a dead kid with Julianne Moore.
All right, this makes a little more sense now. Okay.
It happened on the set at Benny and June.
You wheeled your
I was an 8-year-old.
you wheeled your hate for Julianne Moore on a chain.
Well, I was 8.
Well, they say that you hate what reminds you of yourself. Maybe Clancy has an inner hot redheaded MILF.
If any one of us is gonna have that, it's
I
Clancy.
don't know. When Mark Ruffalo's like, get away, I'm infected, and then she kisses him on the eyes, I'm like, I hate you. Why are you so nonsensible?
You're reaching back into past episodes. We got to move forward,
Julianne Moore
Clancy.
does that to me.
She makes you ignore the loss of space time.
You know who deserves a lot of credit on this movie, though, back to the topic at hand, is the production designer, the production design team. There's so much world building happening in the details on the wall.
Yeah.
Not just the bad photoshops of Michael Caine, but like every single
Oh,
thing.
those were great.
You know there's a lot of care put into everything that was going on, even when he's just like, okay, we're going to run down this hallway before you hand the camera off to the 6th cameraman. Mm-hmm. Every length is like filled with world building details, which I really appreciated. So
Yeah.
I mean, I thought like that whole like, oh, it's digital signage, it's animated. That whole shtick is so like kind of tropey. Probably not when this movie came out, but even that didn't bug me in this movie.
No, it somehow captured it. It's held up. I was surprised by that too. Their way they did screens and displays were just really simple, and they didn't try to like do anything fancy with it.
Like, is it Danny Houston? His character, like they're making this artist's arc where it's just these imperialistic folks just using their money and influence to hoard as many beautiful things they can. Like, there's just so many interesting details put into this movie that, you know, like that a less careful, less caring caremaker would have been like, oh yeah, he goes to his buddy who's a higher up and he gets a favor. But they're like, no, he's collecting camels and shit. And, yeah.
I want to say the only bit of technology in this movie that is just kind of like, what the fuck were they thinking there? Is in the art collector scene, his son with like that weird glove on his hand.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm doing computer stuff.
The Blade Runner-y thing, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, didn't iPhones already come out by 2006?
Yeah.
Well, I wonder why that kid had a scar on it.
But the eye glove hasn't come out yet.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like, I felt like Cuarón was like, I like Terry Gilliam movies. Let's give him a little nod.
I mean, that's just a sign. Like, that kid had a scar on his face and a tattoo on his neck. I'm like, oh, what's up with Danny? Besides from being just a latent disappointment. What's he going on? Yeah.
Was he the Post Malone?
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, actually,
really,
Isaac, iPhones didn't come out until 2007, which is surprising.
Fuck my dick.
Because if you look at the app like he's playing with, they're apps. They look like an iPhone app, so
2007? Really?
surprising. Yeah, apparently, yeah.
That seems so late. I swear I've had my iPhone since I was like 4.
Yeah.
No? All right.
2007.
There you go. So Alfonso Cuarón invented the iPhone.
Yep.
Yeah. Fuck you, Steve Jobs.
Yeah, fuck you, Jobs.
Stole
Carrots
shit from
couldn't save
everyone.
me, could they?
Clancy, how about just how the film handles the whole pandemic? The loss of fertility, the loss of children in this film.
the disease itself is decidedly underdeveloped, which is, fine because I think it's focused more on, like I said, the impact of a disease on our society and our power structures. So I give it a huge pass. Big old pass there.
So overall, this film survives.
Survives. Yep.
All right, that's 2 survival votes. We'll move on to. Oh, I guess it's me. We'll move on to myself here.
In your argument, Clancy, yes, the disease came and the disease went in both of the movies, Blindness and this one.
Yep.
Difference is, in this movie,
You liked it.
That coming back. Yes, first of all. Her being pregnant is literally like a miracle, mind-blowing, like plot driving aspect. And the fact that she's even having a kid at all is what everyone is genuinely like, even there don't understand it and don't get
So, if the Japanese man had been blind for 18 years and his sight magically returned, it would have been fine.
Yeah, sure.
Nothing is
No, it's how it was handled. Like, the twist at the end of blindness was just, oh, it's cured and it's good. This one's like,
Look,
she is pregnant. This is gonna drive the
let's
rest
not
of
call
our
it a
plot forward.
twist, and let's not. That episode was over an hour long. We don't need to add any more to it.
We're done with blindness.
We're done with
Please
blindness.
Talk about Children of Men, boy.
Yes, Alfonso Cuarón. So I actually have used this film as part of my film and humanities course lineup for several years now. Mainly we use it to talk about a few different things, narrative structure and actually point of view, which is always something that I've really appreciated about this film, is how well the point of view is expressed and restricted to the protagonist, Theo. This is a film that has an incredibly restricted point of view. We never see the film outside of Theo's point of view. We are locked in Theo from beginning to end of this film.
Yeah.
It's Theo's movie, and we only learn things when Theo knows them. And I love how Cuarón plays with that and does that. There's a scene in the film that I've always appreciated. Again, the technical aspect of this film is always impressive. The long takes and with terms of point of view and pacing, what the long takes do in sort of locking you into real time and experiencing everything in real time makes this movie so visceral in that way. But there's a scene where Clive Owen is he's met up with the fishes after Julianne Moore's character's been killed, and he ends up going outside. I think he's smoking at the time, and he ends up overhearing a plot to basically have him killed because he's getting in the way of their plans of what they want to do with this woman, Key, who has the baby or is having the baby. Mm-hmm. And it's all shot from outside of the house through Theo's point of view. We're on the side of the wall with Theo, learning, the information through the window, essentially, as he listens, which in most other films, if they're going to traditionally cut away and have a multiple point of view film, we would just cut inside of the house, and then we'd see Theo peeking in through the window, right? But this film chooses to continually remain with Theo, and so we are locked in with that character from beginning to end. From the time he's ordering his coffee that the coffee shop gets blown up in the very beginning of this film.
Dumping bourbon into his scotch.
It's his disease that saves him in the beginning. It's his addiction, which is great. And as he goes on, his addictions start to fade away because he's also smoking. By the end, he can't even get a smoke out of it. There's this constant thing where every time he tries to pull out a cigarette, something fucking happens that causes him not to be able to smoke it. So it's about all his basically his hang-ups kind of getting stripped. He's getting stripped down. He's losing clothing and shoes the whole way he goes. He's being stripped down to this bare man and having to protect this individual, which is
speaking to your perspective thing, Boyd. I think that's why, Isaac was saying, part of the reason that a lot of the long takes work is because of that establishment of his perspective and feeling, where it doesn't feel so showboaty, even though on a technical level it really is impressive, because it's still adding to the story and what he's experiencing. So the tension you feel is along with him that they've set up throughout the entire film. So it works.
Yeah, I think, and just thematically, we've already said this before, but the way that, Clancy was saying, that this film really centers on the aftermath of what this pandemic does. And there's actually multiple pandemics referenced in this film. There's the loss of fertility, but there's a flu pandemic that apparently wipes people out as well. So this is a world that has been ravaged by disease. There's even kind of nods to that. There's a sequence where Jasper, Michael Caine's character, and Theo are driving out to Jasper's place in a rural area, and they drive along a field where we see livestock carcasses that are still smoldering from being burnt. So there's this fear of plague and disease where we're burning livestock for whatever reason. But and just the way that like the ghettos are built in this film, and the way that there's this immigration chain that is set up to prevent people from coming in and out that we continually see, and how it escalates. It's a little unnerving because there's this kind of hyper realism to the film that I think works really well. It's gritty and it's very real.
The way they do the violence, and like the way the way the violence works in this movie, the fact that he doesn't kill the guy that Isaac doesn't like. You know what I mean? Like there's even that reinforces the realism to like, you don't get a fist fight your antagonist in this world.
Right.
He gets shot unceremoniously in the background. Like,
right.
Well, and also like how there were direct visual references to like shit that was going on, and still is going on in the world, especially like this was the height of like the Iraq Civil War and the rise of ISIS, and to have that sequence where there's the parade of Islamic protesters that erupts into just mass slaughter. I'm getting chills just thinking about it. Like, oh fuck, that it's like at the time, especially that I remember that being like, oh fuck, this movie is going for it, and it's still super relevant. Yeah,
I mean, there's this whole thing too about this sort of cultural fabric. I mean, immigration has this ongoing theme in the film. I mean, even Key herself is sort of the Mother Mary symbol in this film. Is treated as an immigrant. They call them Fugees, right? They're fugitives, immigrants, and she is black. And what I like too is that she's also, clearly from a different socioeconomic level. She speaks in a different, like, colloquial language. She's clearly from, maybe an area that's less educated than the bureaucrat Theo. So there's that issue. There's a woman in the film when they get into like the restricted ghetto who I think she's some sort of like she's from Croatia or Romania.
Romani.
Yeah. But she never speaks English, but she
saves the freaking day.
She said, there's this element of all these people from different walks of life that get folded into this global cause when Key and her baby, Bazooka, what did she end up naming it? Oh, at the end, I think she names it after
Dylan.
Dylan, after Theo's child. But she does joke about she jokes about naming it Bazooka.
That's right. Okay.
She makes a joke.
I have a question real quick.
Yeah.
Aside from, I'm looking at the aesthetics, you got like a hard drinking, smoking guy who has a femme fatale show up back in his life that drags him into a mystery that's above and beyond his pay grade. Is that it? Or can you consider this movie kind of a noir, given the whole, I don't know, it's like a noir pandemic movie, unfolding the mysteries around it.
I mean,
it's a buddy cop movie.
Yeah.
There's elements, but I don't think there's enough.
The other buddy, the baby?
Yeah. The original title of this movie was Bazooka Joe.
That was my big takeaway when I watched it this most recent time. I'm like, oh, he's just like some depressed guy with a tragic history who has a woman from his past walk in through his door and drag him into events beyond his comprehension.
The difference is the gumshoe, the unwitting gumshoe at the end would come to a realization, they would be fucked at the end. They'd come to a realization that they've made the wrong choices, or that the world is so big that their efforts were worthless at any point.
They'd forget it, Jake. It was Chinatown.
Exactly. Where at this film actually has kind of a somewhat, there's a neutrality to it. It's reminiscent a little bit of Casablanca in that our heroes are kind of traveling off into the fog, into the unknown, but at the very end, we do see the ship Tomorrow coming through the fog. And even though, spoiler alert, Theo doesn't necessarily make it, the naming of the child as Dylan and the fact that he gets her close enough to see the ship of Tomorrow means that this character has gone through the arc. He's gone through the Rick arc in Casablanca, and that he was a man who came from a lifestyle choice where he fought for causes beyond himself. He became a cynical bureaucrat who only looked out for number one, and then he ends up learning again to care about other people. So, yeah, there's a lot of correlation here. Sometimes I actually show this film right after Casablanca, and then I give that little speech, and everyone goes, "Whoa, Professor! What?"
And then they're like, "You're the best professor in the world." And
I'm
then
like,
they
"That's
put
right."
you up on their shoulders and they carry you out.
Class dismissed.
Rudy.
To wrap my thoughts up, just on the pandemic as well. I agree. This is really kind of a post-apocalyptic film about the results of the pandemic. The concept, the drive of the plot is the fact that the pandemic is shifting. That Key is pregnant, and that becomes a driving force, which I think still keeps the pandemic theme throughout the film. And there's one of the most memorable sequences in the movie is towards the end during the breakout of the battle of the war, as I think it's British military is invading this ghetto basically for refugees, that Key and Theo are escaping, and the baby starts to cry, and the entire battle pauses while they walk down the stairs and exit the building, and everyone, including the gun-clad soldiers, stop and pause because it's been nearly 2 decades since anyone's set their eyes on an infant, and it's a great moment because it's like this wow moment, and then it's this great cynical moment because as soon as they clear the fucking building, the gunfire erupts and an explosion goes off, and you know that it was only a respite, it was only a pause, and what is the dark ongoing tale of humanity. So
so many chunks come out of that window.
They do. A lot of chunks. But clearly for me too, and using this as a teaching tool, I remember seeing this film in the theater and leaving just like fucking jazzed, and I was like, holy shit. And I think I'd seen a couple trailers. I was interested in the film, but after leaving, I was like, that was the best film ever. So it's still memorable to me. I still enjoy watching it. I've easily seen it a dozen times now, but it definitely survives for me. Mr. Harum, I'll kick it back to you to kind of give some final thoughts, some final notes, and to wrap up the episode.
I think we all kind of hit in a very similar points. It's nice when there's a movie. I don't know if it makes for as much entertainment when we all are discussing and not yelling at each other, but when there's a good movie that comes across, I really enjoy hearing other people's perspectives.
I disagree, and I think you're wrong, you son of a bitch.
Fuck. Well, fuck you.
I hope you go blind. And then miraculously recover and not be moved.
I fit this movie into the same category I do with like Blade Runner, where every time I return to it and watch it, I feel like I come away with something new or a new thought on it or like a new experience. And that is so rare to me when I'm watching any film, really. Like just the fact that, again, I could like pull it up today, rewatch it, and discovered new things across the board, whether it was like thematics or like Clancy was saying, the production design on this movie is just incredible. And I see new visual things every time I watch it, every time. And it only like builds that world more just in that regard. And then just even on a technical visual effects level, for me, who is, I do that, a lot for a living, it still holds up and is still massively impressive to go back to a movie from 2006. This is 15 years ago, and not question any of the techniques they used. And I this time I even looked for some of those seams and stuff, and it was great. Like it's just technically impressive, amazing story, thematics that you can return to and enjoy and apply sadly to modern day society. And just across the board, one of my favorite films. So for me, definitely thumbs up. Great.
Awesome
film.
And Julianne Moore gets shot, right, Clancy?
Ping pong ball. Ping pong ball doesn't really hold up either. Like that looked a little cheesy.
Anyway, all right.
Really?
All right.
Go out the ping pong ball?
You don't want to kiss a ping pong ball out of Julianne Moore's mouth.
Yeah. You're just...
I'll leave that to you guys.
You're hating for hate's sake.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy, Clancy.
Yeah.
We're going to work through this. You and Julianne Moore are going to become best friends. I know it. All right, everybody.
Explain it. And like reverse catnip.
Is Julianne Moore Clancy's Charlie Hunnam?
I think
That could be.
maybe. Yeah.
So that's why you
Wait,
guys.
but
This is the perfect movie to bring us all together. They both get violently murdered in this.
You guys owe me cake. This is 2 Julianne Moore movies. Like, have I done any of this to you guys?
Yeah, that is bizarre. Julianne Moore is the through line of this.
Yeah, I didn't
entire podcast.
intend for that, but all right, everybody, thank you very much for tuning in on this episode. I want to encourage you all to like and subscribe and do all the YouTube stuff so that you can catch the future episodes. And if you haven't watched any of the past episodes, what are you doing? Go back, watch the rest of it. Come on. Before we close out, I do want to thank our hosts as well, Adam Harum, Isaac Joslin, and Clancy Bundy. Thank you very much for coming on this episode of the show. I do also want to tease what's coming up on our next episode. We're going to be visiting George Romero's The Crazies, 1970... Isaac? 1973.
1973.
I was going to say 4. I'm glad I asked. 1973, The Crazies. So if you're a Romero fan, be sure to tune in next week and catch this next episode. All right, everybody. That's it for this episode of the PandemFlick Vodcast. We will catch you next time. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy. Go ahead, Isaac.
And we'll see you all in hell.
And stay
got it
alert.
this time.
Stay alert. See you guys.